What's up? And here we go. We're getting off to a good start with the podcast. Starting off a half hour late. Tom, he's sitting here waiting for him. Text me about a half hour and say, "Oh, my alarm just didn't go off." And so, even though we should have been a half hour into the podcast, we're getting it going now. Well, at least your team's hot. 8 in a row. Feel good. Yep, three in New York. Then the Yankees play four against the Mets, split 2-2, and then 3 games at Boston. So it's a big week. It's a big 10 games. Hmm. Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. And it seems like he's pressing. Watching him day in and day out, he looks like he did when he came up at the end of the year last year. He came up at the end of the year. He was swinging at everything. He was this big, huge guy who was different than anything we had seen before. So he, all the attention got to him. He'd swing at everything. He'd strike out every other at bat. He wasn't hitting the ball out of the park. And at the beginning of this year, it looked like he had really made a commitment in the offseason to change his approach. It was amazing at the pitches that he was swinging at. He wasn't taking, sliders and the outside part of the plate, curveballs in the dirt. He just was taking them, high fastballs and everything. And that is why his average was so high, because he was walking a ton. But if the ball was in the middle of the plate, he was hitting it over the fence. And now it seems since the last month or so, really, I mean, it hasn't been a small clip where he's been struggling. He's been cold for a really long time. He's been chasing, and it just seems like he's pressing and trying to get back into it. So, yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and he has a big strike zone too. He's got a huge strike zone. He's 6'7". Pitches at the knees are tough for him to hit, but if he chases the high fastballs, he's not going to catch up to him. Hmm. No. Yeah, I mean, if he's a lifetime 275 hitter and hits 30 home runs a year, that's great. If he's more, do I think he's going to be more? No, just because I think players like that aren't going to hit 300. They're not 300 hitters, no. Like John Carlos Stanton never hit 300, and he's never gonna, but he'll hit the ball over the fence 40 times a year. So yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and the average isn't horrible. It's not like he's an Adam Dunn who's going to hit 205 tops, 210's a good year, you know. So he'll, yeah, yeah, a Chris Carter kind of guy. Chris Carter, Carlos Pena. You remember Carlos Pena back with the Rays, the first baseman? One of those guys who every time we went down to Tampa Bay, he'd hit a home run every game. Oh yeah, oh yeah. He Well, I mean, I'm not a Chris Carter follower by any means, but he was with the A's. He the Yankees designated him for assignment because I mean he was just struck out every single at bat. So and the Athletics picked him up. So and they actually just traded Yonder Alonso. So maybe they're making room for Chris Carter. See, yeah, those are the type of guys who I don't want on the Yankees. Like Todd Frazier, he's a great guy. I like him, but he's gonna hit 230 and he's gonna hit home runs. I would rather have if I was building a club up, I would want a bunch of guys who hit for average because the runs are gonna come if you're getting hits, you know. So I'd much rather have nine guys like I don't know Eduardo Nunez who would hit 300, you know, or I guess he's not a good example. Marco Scutero, for example. But a bunch of guys like Marco Scutero who are going to hit 300, they never hit home runs. I'd rather have nine of those than nine Chris Carters or Mark Reynolds even. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt. He was hitting 340 with 30 home runs. It was ridiculous. He is. Yeah. No, I think right now Altuve, I'd give Altuve the nod right now just because he's played the whole year. You know, Trout, he was out for a couple months. And I mean, Trout was, Trout is probably, he's definitely without a doubt the best player in the game. And he's having a great year still. But also, I mean, you got to take away from him that he missed some time. So Altuve has been more consistent. I mean, Altuve is on pace to have well over 200 hits again, which he does that year in and year out. That's normal for him. So I think I'd go with Altuve right now. But I mean, Trout. If you tell me you were giving Trout the MVP every single year, I wouldn't even have any doubts about it. Yeah, a little longer than that. Hmm. Oh, I know, it's ridiculous. Yeah, yeah, that's not a deep roster at all. Hmm. Yeah, he's a 5 tool player. I mean, he hits the ball out of the park too. The whole That's like a requirement of being on the Astros. You got to hit home runs. Hmm. Yeah, no, they don't, but they get good innings. They get good innings from their guys. I mean, guys like Lance McCullers and Cal McHugh, they're not big names, but they get the job done and they put up good numbers. I mean, I think they're similar to the Dodgers and that all their pitchers have ERAs under 4. They're all having good years, and then they score a ton of runs. So, mhm. Yeah, yeah. Well, the old cliche is that good pitching cancels out good hitting, and that's definitely true in the playoffs. I mean, you look at some guys; they make careers out of hitting off of bad pitching. Like, for example, Alex Rodriguez never really did much in the playoffs, but he was a lifetime 280 hitter because he just feed off poor pitching. Oh, I know. His Oh, I agree. I agree for sure. His son is a prospect right now. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Hmm. Well, I think that he's overshadowed by some of the stars on his team. I mean, Arenado in the last couple of years has made himself a household name. Carlos Gonzalez is a household name. I think Gonzalez is still the face of that franchise. I think Arenado is becoming it more, but I think as of now, Carlos Gonzalez is still the biggest star on that team. I mean, they've got guys. They've just got a lot of big names on that team, so I think that Blackman is overshadowed by them. But if you look at his numbers, I mean, he's been great. You know, he's hitting for average, he's hitting for power. I mean, obviously the park plays a factor in that, but he's having a great year. And he was an all-star. You know, he got to be in the home run derby where he showed off his power. So it's good for him that he's having a great year. And I think that I don't know if he'll win the MVP just because of the big stars in that league that he's competing against. But I think that if he can keep this going, I mean, show that he's not just having one good year, then he could really make a name for himself in this league. I mean, he's not that old. He's 30, maybe 31. So he could still have some of his best years ahead of him. Oh, yeah. I mean, low key too. He's doing great. Mhm. Yes. Hmm. Yeah. 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 Goldie's one of those guys where if he played in New York or Boston or anywhere on the East Coast, he'd be a household name. You know, but he's out there in Arizona. They don't get a lot of TV time. They're never on ESPN. But he just does his thing day in, day out, and he's a great player. I mean, he's really carrying that team. You look at the Diamondbacks; they've got 65 wins. You know, they're a great team right now. I mean, they're in the division with a team that's on pace to win the most games ever. So, unfortunately, they don't have a chance of being division champs. But that team's had a solid season, and he's been the part of the main reason behind that. But looking at the other side of it, the same division, the Rockies, Arenado has been the Arenado and Blackman, the main reason they've been doing as well as they have. So, I mean, Arenado and Goldschmidt, I think they're two very similar players. Arenado's glove is a little better. I mean, I don't think anyone will dispute that Arenado's the best defensive third baseman in baseball. But other than that, those are two very similar players who put up similar numbers every year. Goldschmidt will hit for a little higher average. Arenado may have more power just because he plays in Colorado. I mean, he's near 100 RBIs. Last I checked, it was 97. So, but other than that, I mean, you could give it to either of those two guys. Mhm. Yeah, that's the case with most of us. that's a, yeah. Don't even get them started on hockey and basketball. Do you think Cody Bellinger would have any chance at making a run at the MVP? And he's just if Aaron Judge wasn't in the league, Cody Bellinger would be the next big thing. He's a rookie. He's playing in Los Angeles for the Dodgers. He's he hits home runs. He's kind of a swaggy player. So he's yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, there's still a third of the season left to go. Anything could happen. I mean, guys get hurt. Guys, I mean, you got to stop producing. If Judge doesn't produce for the rest of the year, I don't even think you give him the rookie of the year. You got to give it to someone else. If he only has one one good half, you know. Yeah, yes, yeah, uh, yeah, yeah. People tweet at him, "Happy birthday, Boston, Boston this, Boston that." But we stole from him. So credit to Brian Cashman for that. Well, I honestly don't. I don't think so. Yeah, he's good for the game. You know. Yeah, he's like a Mike Trout. It's just good for the game, I mean, it really sucks when a guy like that gets hurt, like a Trout or a Harper. Yeah, it's it. Oh, just said screw it. All right, I'll end it now. Okay.